What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and today we're out here in the middle of nowhere. We're actually just outside of Vegas, and I managed to borrow that little Tenere 700 right there from the folks over at Ride Adventures. I'm down here doing some work with them. We're going to be doing a training later this weekend, but I needed to sneak away because Suzuki done went and released some new motorcycles for the first time in a long time, which is really cool. And we need to know whether or not I called it right about that new parallel twin engine. So, of course, today we are finally going to be talking about the GSX8S. And don't worry, the Transalp and the DE800 are going to be coming in a later video. But today, it's all about that Gixxus. Is it any good? We're going to find out today. Stay tuned. It's going to be a good one. Well, folks, I'm happy to report that there's been no sign of Caesar's Legion out this way. However, we have reports of the GSX8S. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I know that I'm out in the middle of nowhere on an adventure bike, and it seems more appropriate to talk about the DE and the Transalp, but bear with me, we are going to be talking about that eventually. I just think the Gixxus is kind of a cooler situation, to be honest, and so we're going to talk about it. So, the first and foremost thing is new motorcycle from Suzuki. Holy cow, right? I honestly was not expecting that. I was certainly not expecting to see this new parallel twin bike quite so soon. Get this thing in neutral and off-road ABS. Since I am not on a road, let's go. I'm lost. I have no idea where I came in. I have no idea where I'm going. All I know is that there's a road somewhere over there. So, what do we know about this new Suzuki? Well, thankfully, Suzuki's actually given us pretty detailed specs on the bike. And the first thing that we know is that it is a 776cc parallel twin with a 270-degree crank. Now, originally, I was not expecting to see a 270 from Suzuki. That seemed a little bit odd to me, given how kind of price conscious they are on everything and more or less how budget their bikes tend to be. I was really expecting them to just go with the 180, but I'm all for a 270-degree crank parallel twin because they're much better. So, beyond the displacement, we actually have some horsepower and torque. We've got 82 horsepower and about 58 foot-pounds of torque, I believe, which is a pretty solid number, all things considered. That's a really good torque figure. This way. Come back. Ride this out. Those are solid figures. However, as we're going to get into later, I was kind of expecting a little bit more out of this engine. But, you know, all things considered, sure. I'll take it. This is interesting here. I'm going to do this seated because this is not my bike. And I don't want to drop it before I even get out and do the training. Yay, I made it! He says before making it. Some other specs we've got, we have 445 pounds wet and ready to ride. We also have a seat height of 31.8 inches, which is actually pretty tall. We've also seen there's a, you know, they've been very liberal with their photos of the bike, so we have a ton of information about what it looks like. And we've got that big 5-inch TFT display, which I actually think looks really nice on it. It's it's a lot nicer than I thought we were going to see. And, you know, TFT dashes are becoming more and more commonplace, so good on Suzuki for getting with the times and offering it on a, I'm not going to call it a budget bike, but on, you know, a middle-priced motorcycle. It's good to see that technology trickling down. With that TFT dash, we actually have a full suite of technology on the motorcycle. We've got traction control, we've got ABS, we've got rider modes, we've got all of that good stuff, and an up and down quick shifter, which is super duper cool. Again, that's a upmarket piece of tech that we're now seeing kind of trickle down to, you know, the man of the people motorcycles, which is great. I love seeing more and more of that technology trickle down because it'll cause wider adoption of this stuff, and it's just generally good. I know you're probably sitting there being like, oh, I like shifting gears the old-fashioned way. Have you ever used a quick shifter? And have you ever used an auto blipper? That's really the question. Now, the real question is, what is this motorcycle going to cost? Because we're dealing with a bike that is feature-rich compared to bikes like the MT07, but it's also outgunned when you look at bikes like the 890 and other motorcycles, which we are going to take some time to take a look at all that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that this bike is roughly going to be about 9,500 bucks. It might be right around 10 grand. The only issue with 10 Gs is you're right at Aprilia Tuono and Tuono factory money. It's a little bit more expensive. I'll have all the prices here in a sec, but you know, it would be a little bit of a bummer to see this motorcycle break that 5-figure barrier. I'd like to see this be under 10 grand. Also, Suzuki, they're not like Honda. They don't overprice their motorcycles. I think they're actually very feature-rich, and they're very well priced for what they've got on the bike. Suzuki does a good job positioning their bikes in the market. Now, here's the real question. Was I right about this new motorcycle, about the GSX8S? Was I correct? Yeah and no. That's sort of the nature of speculation, is it's really hard to know for sure what you're going to get when you're looking at these bikes. And I think I was expecting more of a middleweight contender than what we got. What we've got is more or less a bike for, you know, your second or third at bat with a bike. This isn't your, like, finisher, quote-unquote, motorcycle, although I think it could be. But I was expecting more power out of it. So what did I get wrong on the motorcycle? Well, obviously, I was claiming about 100 to 110 horsepower out of an 850-ish cc engine. I was off by like 75 cc's, which is not great, let's be honest. And I was off by about 20 to 30 horsepower. So I feel like this engine could certainly be bored out to that, you know, 100-ish horsepower number and about 850 cc's relatively easily. But I don't know that Suzuki has the appetite to make a proper middleweight naked bike with that parallel twin. I think that they're considering this motorcycle to be, you know, beginner plus a little bit. And the reason I say that is because you can actually get this motorcycle in the UK with an A2 restrictor kit on it, like you can with an MT07. So you can actually get it limited to 47 horsepower, and then when you're done, you can take that limiter off. Now, obviously, that's not going to show up in the States because it never does, and you can just, you know, go buy whatever the heck you want for your first motorcycle, because that makes a lot of sense. I'm being facetious, by the way. But, you know, a lot of people are going to be like, well, you know, this motorcycle's probably going to be good for a beginner, right? Not really. And that makes me wonder why Suzuki is essentially using this to replace the SV650. That's another thing that I misread on it, was I thought this was going to be a GSX750 replacement, because I was expecting it to have more power. That would make the 750 a little redundant. So it doesn't really make sense to me for them to make their beginner bike more powerful, because that widens the gap between the SV650 and the GSX 250, which the GSX 250 is an appalling beginner bike, and it doesn't get any better with the GSX8S coming out in, you know, with more power. That gap is wider. What did I get right? Well, I got right that they had the TFT dash. We were going to be seeing some good technology on this motorcycle. I do wish that we saw adjustable suspension. It looks like this suspension from the specs is completely non-adjustable. Again, that's a huge bummer. So I'm not sure why they were going to position this motorcycle with non-adjustable suspension. But, you know, maybe they're using that to cut the budget a little bit and limit some feature creep and keep prices down, which, if that's the case, I'm okay with that. Now, to round this video out, we're going to talk a little bit about this bike's place in the market. What is it going to be like relative to its competition? So, this bike is got a bunch of motorcycles it's competing with, and when I say a bunch, I mean a whole bunch of motorcycles. So, the first motorcycle we're going to talk about is the new Honda Hornet. What is it going to be like relative to the Honda Hornet? Well, the Hornet is making more power out of less displacement, and the GSX is probably going to be a little bit heavier. So, all things considered, the Honda is probably going to be your choice if you want more power. It also doesn't appear to have the same level of technology. So if you want a simpler, faster ride, it's probably about the same price. The Hornet is going to be for you. However, I do think the Suzuki is going to have more build quality than the Hornet, because it really is aiming to be that, you know, second motorcycle that you get. It's that second or third. It's your upgraded bike. Next up, let's talk MT07. This is the first of the real death blows against the MT07. This is the first bike that's really trying to unseat the MT07 as that playful option for the street. And I love that, because yeah, the MT07 is a great motorcycle, but you know, it's been at the top of its class for years. It's time for somebody to come for it. So it's got more technology, it's got more features, it's got more power. The only thing that the MT might have is it might be a little bit cheaper. But honestly, I see the 8 as being the way to go over the MT07, honestly. I'd have to ride them back to back to be sure, but you know, we're pretty darn close to seeing the first real contender against the MT07. Lastly, from Japan, we have the lovable Z650. This one is the last nail in the coffin. There are so many nails in that motorcycle's coffin at this point. I don't know how it's getting out, but you know, this just goes to show that Kawasaki really has been sitting on their laurels with that motorcycle. It's time for them to go back to the drawing board and really update it with something more, because it doesn't have any of the features it needs to compete with bikes like the GSX and the MT07. Moving across the pond, we have the Duke 890. So this is really what I saw this bike going up against, the Duke 890. I really thought we were going to see something battling it out for that, you know, 110, 115 horsepower, top end of the, you know, middleweight category bike, and unfortunately this isn't really gonna do it. People aren't really gonna be cross-shopping these two bikes, so if you're looking for more power, more features, and more price, the Duke is the way to go.
However, if you want, you know, a more budget experience that also still has a lot to offer, then you have your Gixxes. So I think we're seeing the crowning of a potential new king here in the Japanese marketplace. We're seeing a big 4 bike really trying to take over that middleweight category, and I'm all for it. I'm really going to try to get myself hands on this motorcycle so I can review it, but we're going to have to wait and see whether or not I can find a dealership that has them, or whether or not somebody's willing to lend me theirs for the day, because for sure I'm going to be doing a day in the saddle on one of these the second I can. And that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. A big shout out to Ride Adventures for bringing me out to the lovely Mojave Desert to check out all of the cool sights and do some riding off-road and learn how to ride this Tenere like a real boy. And I will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.